Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Aurora, and welcome to Twin Flame Journey, a space where we explore the deeper meaning behind soul connections, divine timing, and the path that leads two hearts back to union. If you've been feeling the signs, you're in the right place.
He didn't wake up all at once. That's the part nobody tells you. It wasn't some dramatic confession. No movie scene. No perfect apology at your door in the rain. It was smaller than that. Almost embarrassing, honestly. It was him staring at his phone at 1:14 in the morning, opening your chat, typing 3 words, deleting them, then locking the screen like he suddenly hated himself for caring. It was him hearing your name in a random conversation and going quiet for the rest of the night. It was him realizing the silence he asked for didn't actually bring peace. Just more room to hear his own thoughts. And maybe that's when it starts. Not when he becomes wise. Not when he suddenly knows how to love perfectly. But when avoiding the feeling becomes more painful than feeling it. Because a man can spend years pretending he's fine, distracting himself, working more, sleeping with the wrong people, becoming colder after intimacy, acting detached because attachment feels dangerous. But eventually the body tells the truth. The chest tightens. The sleep gets weird. The loneliness stops feeling clean and starts feeling haunted. And the strange part is when a divine masculine finally starts waking up emotionally, it rarely looks spiritual from the outside. Sometimes it just looks like a man losing his ability to lie to himself. So if you've been noticing strange shifts, contradictions, emotionally awkward behavior that doesn't fully make sense, these are 10 signs your divine masculine may finally be awakening. Not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly. He said he needed space, and maybe part of him meant it. That's the uncomfortable thing about this kind of connection. People want one clean explanation, one simple villain, one clear emotional truth. But real people are rarely that organized inside themselves. Part of him genuinely felt overwhelmed. The closeness scared him. The emotional intensity started touching places in him he had spent years avoiding. Old insecurities, dependency, vulnerability, the terrifying possibility of actually needing someone. And another part of him honestly thought distance would make everything quieter. Less emotional, less consuming, less real. So he pulled away. Maybe politely, maybe suddenly, maybe in that confusing half-detached way where he still replied sometimes, but felt emotionally absent even when he was there. And at first, the silence felt like relief. That's the part nobody likes admitting. For the first few days, maybe even weeks, there was relief in it. No difficult conversations, no emotional exposure, no feeling observed so deeply. No pressure to explain feelings he barely understood himself. He could go back to his routines. Work, gym, friends, scrolling endlessly at night pretending his brain was encircling the same thoughts over and over. And outwardly he looked fine. That's what makes this so confusing from the outside. Men are frighteningly good at looking functional while emotionally falling apart in slow motion. He still laughed at jokes, still answered emails, still posted stories, still showed up places. You could sit across from him at dinner and never realize half his energy was being used to suppress one person's absence. And the strange thing is sometimes even he doesn't realize it yet. Because emotional suppression rarely feels traumatic at first. It feels productive, distracting, controlled, reasonable. Until the silence gets longer and longer, and eventually something starts happening in the quieter moments. Not huge breakdowns, not cinematic suffering, just little cracks. He reaches for his phone without thinking. Not even consciously, his body does it first. Unlock, open messages, pause, nothing there. Then he locks the screen fast like he caught himself doing something embarrassing. A few minutes later he does it again. And again. Not because he plans to message her, Sometimes he fully convinces himself he won't, but some part of him keeps checking anyway. Like the nervous system still expects connection even after the ego chose distance. And that contradiction starts exhausting him, because now he has two realities happening simultaneously. The version of himself that says, "This is better, I needed this," and the quieter voice underneath saying, "Then why do I feel restless all the time?" Sometimes it hits him late at night. That's usually when the performance starts collapsing a little. The distractions wear off around midnight. Friends stop texting. The noise settles. The room gets honest. And suddenly he's sitting there in the dark replaying tiny moments he didn't think mattered. The way she looked at him after he said something vulnerable accidentally. That one car ride where nobody talked much, but somehow it felt intimate anyway. Her standing in the kitchen half asleep wearing one of his hoodies. Small things. That's what destroys people emotionally in the end. Not always the dramatic moments. The ordinary ones. Because ordinary moments are dangerous. They bypass defense mechanisms. They don't feel important enough to guard against. So they slip directly into the emotional bloodstream unnoticed. And now they come back at random. While driving. While brushing his teeth. While hearing someone laugh in a vaguely similar way. And he hates how affected he is by it. That's important. Because this stage doesn't always look soft or romantic. Sometimes awakening looks irritated, defensive, emotionally disoriented. Sometimes he becomes colder because the missing is starting to feel too real. He tells himself, "You're just lonely." Maybe, but loneliness usually wants anybody. This is different. This is more specific than that. And specificity is what scares him. Because now it's no longer abstract emotion. Now it's her coffee order randomly appearing in his mind while standing in line somewhere else. Now it's hearing a phrase she used to say and feeling his chest tighten before he can mentally stop it. The body reacts first. That's what people don't understand. The body always tells the truth before the mind catches up. And his body is starting to betray him. Sleep changes first sometimes. He sleeps, but not deeply, wakes up exhausted, dreams become emotionally strange, random memories surface without permission. Or he starts staying up till late, because subconsciously he doesn't want the silence of trying to sleep. So he scrolls, watches meaningless videos, opens apps without even absorbing what he's seeing. Then eventually, her profile. Maybe he doesn't even realize he searched it. He just ends up there, looking, not liking anything, not messaging, just observing quietly, trying to understand whether she seems happier, different, distant. There's something deeply sad about emotionally unavailable men once they start caring after the separation, because they often love from hiding first. From distance, from silence, from behind screens. Not because they're manipulative necessarily. Sometimes they're just emotionally unequipped. And honestly ashamed. Ashamed it took losing the connection to fully feel its weight. Ashamed they acted detached while secretly becoming emotionally attached. Ashamed that now the silence they asked for is starting to consume them. And the worst part, sometimes they still won't reach out. That confuses people. If he misses her, why stay silent? Because missing someone and knowing how to emotionally handle missing someone are two completely different things. Some men were taught how to suppress emotion long before they were taught how to communicate it. So instead of moving toward connection, they freeze. They overthink, delay, rationalize. She probably doesn't even care anymore. She's better off. It's too late now. Meanwhile, he's checking her last active status at 2 a.m. like it means absolutely nothing. Human beings are strange like that. Especially wounded ones. And there's another uncomfortable truth nobody talks about enough. Sometimes he starts emotionally unraveling right after getting exactly what he thought he wanted. Distance, freedom, no emotional pressure, no vulnerability. And for a second it feels good. Until it doesn't. Until the freedom starts feeling emotionally empty instead of peaceful. Until he realizes calmness and numbness are not the same thing. That's usually when the silence turns on him. Because silence amplifies whatever was already unresolved underneath. And now, there's no conversation distracting him from himself anymore. No chemistry to hide inside. No texting rhythm. No emotional reassurance. Just him and his own mind. And unfortunately, his mind starts replaying everything now. Things he dismissed before suddenly feel heavier. That moment she went quiet after he pulled away emotionally. The look on her face when he became cold after intimacy. The times she asked simple questions and he treated them like pressure because vulnerability made his chest tighten. He starts realizing she wasn't asking for perfection, just emotional presence. And that realization arrives painfully late sometimes. There's this specific kind of grief men experience when they realize they were loved sincerely while they were still emotionally defending themselves against it. It's not loud grief. It's quieter, more private. It looks like staring at the ceiling too long, driving around with no destination, sitting in parking lots after work delaying going home, rereading old conversations searching for evidence that maybe they mattered more than they allowed themselves to believe at the time. And sometimes there's this internal conversation happening underneath all of it. You wanted space. Yeah. So why are you checking her profile again? I don't know. You miss her. No, you miss her. Silence. Because eventually the excuses stop sounding convincing even to him. And I think that's one of the first real signs something inside him is changing. Not perfection. Not transformation overnight. Just the terrifying beginning of honesty. The moment the silence stops protecting him and starts revealing him instead. The strange thing about emotionally avoidant men is that realization usually arrives late. Not because they're heartless. Not always, anyway. Sometimes they just don't fully process emotional experiences while they're happening. They survive them first, analyze them later, feel them even later than that. So, while the connection is alive, while the conversations are happening, while someone is loving them in real time, part of them is still bracing for impact, still managing fear, still regulating closeness, still trying not to need too much. And because of that, they miss things while they're inside them. Not completely, but enough. Enough that months later, they suddenly break down over a moment that looked completely ordinary at the time. That's the part people rarely understand. His awakening doesn't always begin with some massive emotional epiphany. Sometimes it begins because he walked past a girl in a grocery store wearing the same perfume she used to wear, and his entire chest tightened before his brain even caught up. Just for a second. But it ruins his whole evening afterward. And he can't even explain why. That's what starts happening now. Tiny things begin returning to him. Not the dramatic memories first. The small ones. Always the small ones. Her sitting cross-legged in bed talking about something completely unimportant while he half listened at the time. The way she used to pause before answering emotional questions because she was trying to choose words carefully. That one nervous smile she had when she was pretending something didn't hurt her feelings. He remembers stupid things too. Like the exact way she held her coffee with both hands when she was tired. Or how she always checked the weather before leaving the house, but somehow still forgot a jacket half the time. Things he barely reacted to then. Things he thought were background details. And now suddenly they feel devastating. Because emotional attachment is weird like that. Sometimes the heart records things the conscious mind doesn't fully appreciate until later. Way later. And honestly, I think this confuses him more than the heartbreak itself. Because now, he's sitting there emotionally affected by moments he didn't even realize mattered while they were happening. There is a specific kind of regret in that. The regret of delayed feeling. The regret of emotional realization arriving after the moment is already gone. And he starts replaying things obsessively now. Not intentionally at first. It just happens. He's driving home at night and suddenly remembers one random conversation from 7 months ago. Not even an important conversation. She was talking about her childhood, or maybe some insecurity she rarely admitted out loud. And at the time he responded casually, distracted, maybe even emotionally unavailable without realizing it. But now he remembers her face during the silence after she spoke. Now he remembers she was actually trying to let him closer emotionally. And suddenly he feels sick thinking about how lightly he handled something that vulnerable. It hits late. That's the tragedy. Some men understand the value of emotional intimacy way after the moment to protect it has already passed. And the body reacts strangely when this starts happening. People think awakening is peaceful. Sometimes it looks more like emotional whiplash. He becomes quiet around people without understanding why. Music starts affecting him differently. A random sentence can emotionally destabilize him for hours. And he hates how sentimental he's becoming. That's important too, because part of him still resists it. He'll literally have a moment where he misses her deeply, then immediately criticize himself for caring that much. She moved on probably. You're being dramatic. It wasn't even that serious. But then why is he replaying one sentence she said almost every night? Why does he suddenly remember the exact expression on her face the last time he saw her? Why does his stomach drop every time he thinks about how cold he became toward the end? He tries arguing with himself, but memory is becoming emotional now instead of factual. And emotional memory is dangerous, because it doesn't just replay events, it replays feeling. That's why random moments start haunting him unexpectedly. Maybe he's at work pretending to focus, then suddenly remembers her laughing uncontrollably in the passenger seat one night because he pronounced a word wrong. And the memory hits so hard it actually makes him stop moving for a second. Not because the moment itself was huge, but because it felt alive, real, safe. And he didn't understand how rare that feeling was when he still had access to it. That realization changes people quietly, especially men who spent most of their lives emotionally detached from themselves. And sometimes the memories become painfully specific, like remembering her turning the music down slightly whenever conversations became emotionally serious, or how she used to look at him differently when he accidentally revealed something honest. There's this horrible moment that happens sometimes during separation where he realizes, she was paying attention to me in ways nobody else was. And once he realizes that, he starts noticing the absence of it everywhere. Other conversations feel flatter. Other interactions feel performative. He can still function socially, flirt even, laugh, go out, do normal life things. But something feels emotionally missing underneath all of it now. And that's when the remembering intensifies. Because the mind starts searching backward for the last place it felt emotionally seen. Which is why he suddenly becomes nostalgic over things he barely appreciated before. A random Tuesday night. A voice note. Her falling asleep during a movie. The way she used to ask if he got home safe even after small arguments. Human beings are terrifyingly fragile when it comes to ordinary tenderness. Especially people who secretly spent years starving for it emotionally. And maybe that's why the memories hurt him more now. Because he understands them differently now. At the time, he interpreted closeness as pressure. Now he sees it was intimacy. At the time, he thought emotional consistency was dependency. Now he realizes it was care. At the time, he thought pulling away gave him control. Now it mostly just feels lonely. And loneliness changes the emotional lighting around old memories. Things become warmer in hindsight, more sacred almost. Not because the relationship was perfect. It probably wasn't. That's another thing people oversimplify. Sometimes there were misunderstandings, emotional immaturity, defensive reactions, mixed signals from both sides. But imperfect love can still be real. And once he starts emotionally admitting that to himself, the memories stop feeling easy to suppress. That's when the late night overthinking gets worse. Because nighttime removes distractions. And now, his brain starts replaying specific scenes like unfinished emotional evidence. That one night she asked him softly, "Why do you pull away when things feel good?" And instead of answering honestly, he joked, deflected, changed the subject. At the time, he thought he escaped vulnerability. Now, he realizes she saw through him anyway. That realization unsettles him deeply, because he starts understanding how emotionally transparent he actually was to her, even when he thought he was hiding. Especially then. And there's another painful layer to this nobody talks about enough. Sometimes he begins remembering the moments she loved him hardest right before he hurt her. That destroys people quietly, because now the guilt attaches itself to tenderness. Now he remembers her trying, her patience, her emotional effort, the softness in her voice even when she was exhausted. And beside those memories sits the uncomfortable truth that he often responded with confusion and consistency distance. Not because he wanted to be cruel necessarily, but because emotionally unavailable people often don't recognize safety until after they've destabilized it. That realization can crack something open inside a man. Not instantly, but slowly, like ice melting badly, unevenly. There are nights now where he can physically feel the regret in his body, a heaviness in the chest, restlessness in the legs, random urges to reach out followed immediately by fear. And then the internal dialogue starts again. You should text her. No. Why not? Because what if she's finally okay? Silence. And what if she isn't? That question lingers longer than he wants it to. Because deep down, he knows something now that he didn't fully understand before. She mattered. Not in an abstract, poetic way. In a painfully human way. In the way someone matters when their absence starts living inside your routines. When you begin measuring time by memories. When random parts of daily life suddenly feel emotionally haunted. And maybe the saddest part is this. By the time he fully understands the depth of what he felt, she may have already learned how to survive without hearing it. At some point, his body starts knowing before his mind is willing to admit anything. And honestly, this is usually where things begin getting really confusing for him. Because emotionally avoidant men are often deeply disconnected from their own internal signals. Not completely numb. That's not the same thing. It's more like they learned to translate emotion into functionality instead of feeling. Stress becomes productivity. Sadness becomes withdrawal. Fear becomes irritation. Longing becomes silence. So when emotional awakening starts happening, it rarely arrives as clarity first. It arrives as symptoms, weird moods, restlessness, exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, random emotional reactions that don't match the situation. And because he doesn't fully understand what's happening internally yet, he starts trying to control the external environment instead. That's why some men suddenly start deep cleaning their apartment at midnight after an emotional trigger. Not because they randomly care about organization now, Because emotionally overwhelmed people often try to create physical control when they've lost emotional control. So now, he's scrubbing kitchen counters aggressively at 1 a.m. while pretending the reason his chest feels tight has absolutely nothing to do with her. And the strange thing is, part of him genuinely believes that at first. That's how disconnected the mind can become from the body. He'll sit there thinking, I'm just stressed. Okay, maybe. But why did the stress hit right after hearing her name? Why did his entire mood collapse after accidentally seeing an old photo? Why does he suddenly feel emotionally off for hours after dreaming about her? The body keeps exposing connections the ego tries to deny. That's what's happening here. And the reactions start getting harder to ignore. Maybe someone casually mentions relationships, and suddenly he becomes weirdly quiet, or defensive, or sarcastic. People notice it sometimes before he does. You good? Yeah, just tired. But he's not tired. Not exactly. He's emotionally overloaded in ways he doesn't have language for yet. That's an important part of this. A lot of men were never taught emotional nuance, they were taught emotional management. Meaning they know how to suppress, compartmentalize, minimize, distract. But not necessarily how to sit inside vulnerable feeling without immediately trying to escape it. So now his nervous system is basically forcing emotional truth to the surface while his mind is still trying to maintain control. And that internal conflict creates strange behavior. He becomes emotionally unpredictable sometimes, cold one day, overly sentimental the next, detached during conversations, then secretly replaying them afterward for hours. Part of him wants connection desperately. Another part associates emotional intimacy with danger now. So his body reacts before he can intellectually organize the feeling. That's why sometimes he pulls away immediately after moments of closeness. People misunderstand this constantly. They think, if he cared, why become distant afterward? Because vulnerability can feel emotionally exposing in the body before it feels safe in the mind. So after intimacy, emotional or physical, his nervous system panics a little. Not always dramatically, sometimes subtly. He gets quieter, replies slower, feels irritated suddenly and doesn't fully know why. And underneath the irritation is usually fear. Fear of dependence. Fear of losing control. Fear of needing someone who now has emotional impact on him. There's this deeply human contradiction happening inside him now, where closeness feels good and threatening at the same time. And honestly, that contradiction exhausts him, because he wants the comfort while simultaneously resenting how emotionally affected he becomes by it. So now he starts doing emotionally confusing things. He misses her intensely, then ignores her message for hours. He thinks about reaching out, then suddenly becomes emotionally unavailable the second she responds warmly. He wants reassurance, but feels trapped by consistency. And the worst part is, he often hates himself a little while doing it. Not always consciously, but there's shame building underneath the behavior now. Because deep down he knows his reactions aren't matching his feelings anymore. That awareness starts haunting him, especially during quiet moments. Like sitting in traffic replaying a conversation and suddenly realizing, I acted cold because I cared too much. That realization is deeply uncomfortable for emotionally avoidant people, because now their defenses stop feeling logical and start feeling self-destructive. And his body feels everything before he can mentally explain it. That's why random physical sensations start appearing. Chest tightness, jaw tension, restlessness in his legs at night, sudden emotional heaviness while doing completely ordinary tasks. He might literally be folding laundry when grief suddenly hits him sideways for no obvious reason, and he immediately tries to suppress it. Gets on his phone, turns music on, starts another task. But emotional truth has already entered the room now. That's the problem. Once the nervous system starts connecting the dots, distraction becomes less effective, and certain moments begin triggering him almost automatically. A specific song, a certain street, seeing a couple that reminds him vaguely of what he lost. Even tenderness itself becomes emotionally activating. That's a painful stage nobody talks about enough. When someone becomes so emotionally overwhelmed by unresolved love that even soft things start hurting them. A simple text message, someone asking if they're okay, a memory arriving too suddenly, and sometimes he reacts immaturely during this phase. That's important to admit to, because awakening doesn't automatically make someone emotionally skilled. Sometimes it just makes them emotionally exposed. So instead of processing vulnerability cleanly, he becomes moody, reactive, emotionally inconsistent. Maybe he drinks more than usual one night trying to quiet his thoughts. Maybe he disappears emotionally after feeling too much closeness. Maybe he snaps at people over small things because his internal world feels overstimulated. Human beings do messy things when emotions they buried for years finally start surfacing. Especially men who build entire identities around emotional control. And underneath all of this is grief. Not always obvious grief. Sometimes disguised as frustration. But grief nonetheless. Grief that he cannot undo moments. Grief that he may have mishandled something real. Grief that the connection affected him far more deeply than he initially allowed himself to admit. And there's this specific late night feeling he starts experiencing now, where his body feels emotionally full, but his mind still can't organize the emotion into language. So he just sits there, restless, scrolling without absorbing anything, opening apps and forgetting why, standing in the kitchen staring into the fridge even though he's not hungry. That kind of grief. The kind that lives in the body before it becomes conscious thought. And eventually the internal dialogue starts becoming harder to silence. You're overreacting. Then why can't you sleep? If this meant so little, why does your chest tighten every time you think about her leaving? Silence again. Because the body already answered the question before the mind could defend itself. And maybe that's one of the clearest signs his awakening is becoming real now. His emotions are no longer staying intellectual. They're becoming physical, embodied, inconvenient. He can no longer keep the experience contained inside detached analysis. Now it lives in his routines, his sleep, his reactions, his breathing, his silence. And honestly, I think that's terrifying for him. Because once the body starts telling the truth consistently, it becomes almost impossible to fully return to emotional numbness again. You can distract yourself for a while. You can delay, avoid, pretend. But eventually the nervous system gets tired of carrying emotions the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. And when that happens, the feelings begin leaking out everywhere. At first, distraction still works a little. That's important to understand. People imagine emotional awakening like some dramatic collapse, where suddenly he can't function and spends every night crying into memories. Usually, it's messier than that. More uneven. For a while, he still manages to outrun the feeling. He throws himself into work harder than usual, stays busy, answers texts quickly, keeps moving, keeps noise around himself constantly. And from the outside, it almost looks like he's doing better. Maybe he starts posting more online, going out more, saying yes to plans he normally wouldn't even care about. People around him think he's moved on. Maybe he thinks that to some days. But then something strange starts happening. The distractions stop landing emotionally. That's the real shift. He can still do all the same things, they just don't fully reach him anymore. Like eating when you're emotionally numb, technically you're consuming something, but there's no satisfaction attached to it. That's how his entire life starts feeling in small ways. Temporary stimulation, no emotional nourishment. And honestly, this part scares him more than the sadness did. Because sadness at least feels clear. This feels empty. He's sitting at dinner with friends laughing at jokes. But there's this weird delay inside him now, like part of him is emotionally somewhere else entirely. He notices himself checking his phone during conversations without even realizing why. Not expecting a message specifically, just searching. That's the word. Searching. His body is searching for emotional familiarity, while his ego is still pretending he's detached. And sometimes he catches himself doing it and gets irritated immediately. Focus. He puts the phone down face first on a table. 10 minutes later, he checks it again. The human nervous system is humiliating sometimes, especially when someone you tried to emotionally minimize starts becoming emotionally irreplaceable. And the all distractions start collapsing one by one now. Work becomes the biggest one first. A lot of emotionally avoidant men hide inside productivity because achievement feels safer than intimacy. Success has rules. Emotions don't. You work hard, you get rewarded, simple. But emotional connection, that's unpredictable, vulnerable, exposing. So, for years maybe he survived emotional discomfort by becoming more productive instead. And now, he tries doing it again. Longer hours, more focus, more exhaustion. But now, there's this strange emotional leakage happening underneath everything. He'll be answering emails and suddenly remember her voice. He'll finish a long workday and instinctively reach for his phone to tell her something before remembering there's no conversation there anymore. That realization hits fresh every single time. Not dramatically, quietly, like a small emotional bruise pressed repeatedly throughout the day. And eventually, even his achievements stop giving him the same emotional payoff. That's another terrifying stage. When external validation starts feeling emotionally thin, he still gets compliments, attention, maybe even attraction from other people. But instead of feeling fulfilled, he feels strangely disconnected from it. Like his nervous system knows the difference between attention and intimacy now. And once you know the difference, emotionally casual validation stops hitting the same. That realization sneaks up on him slowly. Maybe he's talking to someone attractive and suddenly feels tired halfway through the conversation. Not because the person did anything wrong, but because emotionally, he's comparing the interaction unconsciously. Comparing depth, comfort, recognition. And now, surface-level connection feels exhausting instead of exciting. That's when he starts experiencing one of the most uncomfortable truths of awakening. Distraction loses its anesthesia. The things that used to numb him emotionally now barely soften the feeling at all. So he keeps trying bigger doses. More work, more socializing, more scrolling, more noise. But grief has a way of surviving underneath stimulation, especially unresolved grief. And it starts showing up in really ordinary moments. He's out with friends, music loud, people laughing around him. And suddenly he feels completely alone. Not physically alone, emotionally alone. Which is worse sometimes. Because loneliness inside crowded spaces versus honesty. There's nowhere to hide from it then. And he starts noticing how performative some of his own behavior has become. The joking, the detachment, the "I'm good" responses. He hears himself saying them and realizes he doesn't fully believe them anymore. That's unsettling, because now the version of himself he built to survive emotionally starts feeling fake to him too. And honestly, I think this is where a lot of masculine awakening becomes deeply internal and invisible. Nobody sees this part. Nobody sees the moment he comes home from a night out, throws his keys on the counter, sits on the edge of the bed in silence, and suddenly feels emotionally exhausted from pretending he's unaffected. Nobody sees him opening social media just to feel temporarily connected to something. Nobody sees him staring at her name for 30 seconds without clicking it. There's this strange grief in wanting contact while being terrified of what contact would actually stir up emotionally. So instead he hovers around the memory of her, indirectly, silently, and the distractions become more pathetic to him now because even he knows they aren't working anymore. That's the thing. Eventually, the avoidance strategy becomes too obvious to ignore. He notices how quickly he reaches for stimulation whenever emotion surfaces. Sad, open the phone. Triggered, turn music on. Missing her, go to the gym. Feeling vulnerable, become emotionally unavailable again. Patterns become visible once they stop functioning. And once he sees them clearly, there's embarrassment attached to it. Because part of awakening is realizing how much of your life was actually avoidance dressed up as independence. That realization humbles people. Painfully, there are nights now where he's driving around for no reason other than he doesn't want to sit still with himself yet. He tells himself he's clearing his head, maybe partially, but mostly he's delaying the moment he has to admit the distractions failed. And sometimes memory slips through anyway. A street she liked, a restaurant they used to go to, a stupid song he pretended not to enjoy, and suddenly the emotional numbness cracks for a second. That's all it takes sometimes. Just one crack, one memory entering at the wrong moment. And now the entire drive home feels emotionally different. He starts realizing the connection didn't disappear just because he stopped talking about it. That's another brutal truth. Silence does not erase attachment. Sometimes it intensifies it, especially for people who suppress instead of process. Because unprocessed emotion doesn't vanish, it waits. In the body, in routines, in unfinished thoughts. And eventually the distractions become exhausting because he's carrying emotional weight into all of them now. Even intimacy with other people can start feeling strange. That's a painful conversation nobody likes having, honestly. Sometimes he tries to move on physically before he's emotionally honest with himself. And afterward, instead of relief, there's emptiness, or guilt, or this hollow feeling he can't fully explain. Because emotionally, part of him is elsewhere. And that realization disturbs him more than he admits. Not because he expected perfection from himself, but because he's starting to understand the depth of what actually affected him. There's this moment that happens sometimes late at night where the performance finally drops completely. No distractions left. No noise left. No dopamine left. Just him alone with the truth. And the truth is usually simpler than all the complicated avoidance strategies. He misses her. Not abstractly. Specifically, her energy, her presence, the emotional familiarity of her. And maybe the hardest part is realizing none of the things he used to escape himself are strong enough to outrun the anymore. Not the work, not the attention, not the distance. Because once someone reaches the parts of you that were emotionally asleep, going back to numbness stops feeling peaceful. It just feels lonely. I think this is the stage where the emotional awakening stops feeling romantic to him. Before this, there was still distance between him and the truth. He could miss her without fully examining himself. He could feel lonely without asking why. He could replay memories while still subtly protecting his own ego inside the story. But eventually, that protection starts collapsing. And what replaces isn't peace. It's accountability. Quiet, nauseating accountability. The kind that shows up randomly while he's brushing his teeth or driving home from work and suddenly realizing, oh, not dramatic, not cinematic, just one horrible little moment of clarity. Oh, I heard her. And the reason this hits so hard is because emotionally avoidant people often don't fully understand the impact of their behavior while they're inside their defensive state. When someone is emotionally defended, they experience themselves as overwhelmed, not harmful. That's important. So, while she was feeling abandoned, confused, emotionally destabilized by inconsistency, he was often internally experiencing stress, pressure, fear, and emotional claustrophobia, which means both people were suffering inside completely different emotional realities at the same time. And now those realities are colliding inside him. That's why this stage feels so psychologically brutal, because he starts replaying moments he previously justified and suddenly seeing them from her perspective instead. That changes everything. Now, he remembers the night she asked him if something was wrong emotionally, and instead of being honest, he became cold, dismissive, maybe even irritated. At the time, he told himself, I just needed space. But now, he remembers the expression on her face afterward. That small shift in her eyes when she realized he was shutting down again. And suddenly the memory feels unbearable, because now he sees the emotional cause and effect clearly. He sees how his silence made her overthink, how his withdrawal made her question herself, how his inconsistency slowly exhausted someone who was genuinely trying to love him carefully. That realization can make a man physically sick when it finally lands emotionally, especially if deep down he knows she was patient with him for longer than most people would have been. And this is where shame enters the process. Not performative guilt, real shame. The kind that makes someone stare at old messages with a knot in their stomach. The kind that makes him remember not only what he did, but who she was while he was doing it. That's the painful part, because now the memories become emotionally layered. He remembers her trying to communicate gently while he avoided vulnerability. He remembers her asking for reassurance in calm ways before things became emotionally explosive later. He remembers moments where she was clearly hurting and he still emotionally retreated because closeness overwhelmed him. And now he can't unsee it. That's the curse of awakening honestly. Once awareness arrives, old behavior becomes difficult to emotionally survive, especially behavior that hurts someone you actually loved. And sometimes the realization comes in humiliatingly small moments, like hearing another man talk dismissively about a woman and suddenly recognizing himself in the behavior. That'll ruin his whole night sometimes. Because awakening isn't just about missing someone. It's about recognizing parts of yourself you no longer feel comfortable defending. That's much harder. Missing someone is painful, but realizing you became emotionally unsafe for someone who trusted you, that's different. That hits deeper. And the problem is once this awareness starts happening, his memories lose their emotional editing. Before, he remembered situations selectively. Now, he remembers details he ignored before. Her voice getting quieter during arguments. The exhaustion in her face near the end. How many times she gave him opportunities to be emotionally honest before finally pulling away herself. And there's usually one memory in particular that haunts him most. Not the breakup. Not the dramatic fight. Something smaller. A moment where she looked emotionally defeated because of him. That memory destroys him quietly. Because emotionally unavailable men often don't realize the cumulative effect of their behavior until they see the emotional aftermath reflected back at them later. And once they do, the regret becomes incredibly specific. Not vague sadness. Specific regret. I should have answered differently. I knew she was hurting there. Why did I shut down like that? Why was I acting like caring less made me stronger? That last one especially. Because eventually he starts recognizing how much of his emotional detachment was actually fear wearing masculine clothing. That realization is deeply destabilizing for some men, especially men who build their identity around being composed, rational, independent, unaffected. Now, suddenly, he has to face the possibility that he wasn't emotionally strong. He was emotionally guarded. There's a difference. And deep down, he knows it now. Which is why some men become unusually quiet during this stage. Not because they stop caring, because they're confronting themselves internally for the first time without distraction protecting them. And honestly, sometimes he still resists the truth even while seeing it. That contradiction matters. People assume awakening means instant maturity. No. Sometimes he fully recognizes what he did and still freezes emotionally afterward. Because awareness and emotional capability are not the same thing. He may know he hurt her, but still not know how to repair shame without shutting down. That's why some men disappear even harder once accountability begins surfacing. Not because they feel nothing, because they feel too much at once. Regret, embarrassment, longing, self-disgust, fear of rejection. And underneath all of it is this horrible realization. She probably thinks I never cared. That thought eats at him. Because now he understands the tragic contradiction of his behavior. The more he felt emotionally overwhelmed, the colder he acted externally. So the person he loved experienced distance precisely during the moments he was internally struggling most. That realization creates enormous guilt, especially when he starts recognizing how often she tried to interpret behavior that even he barely understood himself. And there's this specific late-night mental replay that happens during this stage. He starts revisiting conversations differently, not to defend himself anymore, to study himself. That's new. Now he notices every moment he avoided honesty, every joke used to escape vulnerability, every time she reached emotionally and he emotionally stepped backward instead. And there's usually an internal conversation happening underneath all this. You were scared. I know. But you still hurt her. Yeah. You knew she cared. Silence. You knew. That silence is important. Because the ego has fewer places left to hide now. And maybe for the first time in his life, he begins understanding that emotional damage is not only caused by cruelty. Sometimes it's caused by avoidance, by inconsistency, by being emotionally unavailable in the presence of genuine love. That realization changes people permanently if they let it fully in. And sometimes his body reacts before he can even mentally process the shame. He'll randomly remember something while standing in line somewhere and physically cringe. Like actually tense up. Because now he's emotionally reliving moments from her side too. That's empathy finally breaking through self-protection. Late but real. And honestly, I think this is where many divine masculines secretly begin grieving not only the relationship, but the version of themselves that existed inside it. The emotionally defended version. The detached version. The version that thought vulnerability was weakness and distance was control. Because now he sees the cost of it clearly, not theoretically, personally. And the hardest part, he can't go backward anymore. Once someone truly sees the emotional consequences of their own avoidance, innocence disappears. Now he understands why she cried, why she pulled away eventually, why she stopped feeling emotionally safe. And there's this quiet devastation in realizing someone loved you sincerely while you were still emotionally fighting the experience of being loved at all. That realization humbles him in ways nothing else could. Not spiritually, humanly, painfully humanly. Because now when he thinks about her, He's no longer only missing what she gave him. He's grieving how badly fear distorted the way he responded to it. This is probably the stage that confuses people the most, because from the outside, his behavior stops making logical sense. One minute he seems emotionally present again, softer, more open. Maybe he reaches out unexpectedly. Maybe he lingers in conversation longer than usual. Maybe there's warmth in his voice that wasn't there before. And then suddenly, he disappears again. Replies become delayed. Energy changes. Distance returns. And the person on the receiving end starts thinking, what is happening? The truth is he's emotionally split inside himself now. That's what this stage really is. Part of him is finally waking up emotionally. Another part is terrified of what that awakening requires. Because feeling deeply is one thing. Sustaining vulnerability consistently is another. And emotionally avoidant men often experience closeness and panic simultaneously. That contradiction is real. Not poetic, not spiritualized. Physiological. His chest softens round her and tightens at the same time. He feels relief and connection and fear immediately afterward. So now his behavior starts reflecting both realities at once, which creates emotional whiplash. And honestly, he hates himself for it more than people realize. Because internally, this doesn't feel manipulative to him. It feels confusing. One day, he genuinely misses her so badly he almost texts her immediately after waking up. The next day, he feels emotionally trapped by the idea of intimacy again. Not because his feelings disappeared overnight. Because emotional closeness activated old fears right alongside the love. That's the part people oversimplify too much. They think if someone truly cares, their behavior should become perfectly consistent immediately. But human beings don't heal in straight lines. Especially people who spent years associating vulnerability with danger. So now he's living in contradiction. And contradiction makes people behave strangely. He'll stare at her message for 20 minutes smiling slightly, then reply with something emotionally restrained, because openness suddenly feels too exposing. Or he'll finally let himself have one emotionally honest conversation with her, and afterward disappear emotionally for days because the intimacy overwhelmed him internally. This happens more than people think, especially after moments where he accidentally lets the mask drop, because afterward comes the emotional hangover. That's the only way I can describe it. The nervous system crash after vulnerability, and during that crash, his instinct is still retreat. Distance, silence, control. Even though emotionally he doesn't actually want distance anymore. That's the tragedy. His coping mechanisms are now working against his actual feelings. And he knows it, at least partially. Which is why he starts becoming frustrated with himself now too. There are moments where he fully recognizes his own contradictory behavior in real time. He'll pull away emotionally and immediately feel the loss of connection afterward. He'll ignore a message trying to regain control, then spend the entire night hoping she sends another one. That kind of contradiction slowly exhausts people internally, because now he's trapped between longing and self-protection, and neither side fully wins. Sometimes, he even starts creating unnecessary emotional distance right after moments of closeness, because closeness itself destabilizes him. That's another painful truth. Intimacy can trigger grief in emotionally guarded people, because the closer they feel to someone, the more they subconsciously fear loss, dependence, exposure. So after a beautiful moment together, instead of relaxing into it, his system panics. Not always outwardly, sometimes quietly. He just becomes different, less expressive, more distracted, slightly colder, and the person receiving that behavior feels the shift immediately. That's what hurts so much. The emotional inconsistency. The feeling that love is present one moment and inaccessible the next. But inside him, both realities are happening simultaneously. Part of him wants to stay. Another part is emotionally halfway out the door already. Not because he doesn't care, because caring has become terrifyingly real now. And reality changes things. Fantasy is safer than real emotional attachment. Longing from a distance is safer than actual vulnerability. But once he truly understands her emotional importance, the stakes become personal. Now he can lose something real. Now rejection would actually hurt. Now abandonment would actually destroy him emotionally in ways he can no longer pretend away. So sometimes the closer he feels to her emotionally, the stronger his avoidance reflex becomes temporarily. That's why he may watch from a distance instead of fully approaching, checking her social media, quietly observing her life, wondering if she's happier now. There's this strange emotional paralysis that happens during this stage. He wants connection deeply, but also wants emotional safety. And unfortunately, true intimacy rarely feels fully safe at first to wounded people. Especially wounded men taught to suppress dependency needs. So now he starts giving mixed signals without fully intending to. Warmth followed by withdrawal. Honesty followed by silence. Longing followed by avoidance. And every time he pulls away now, the guilt hits harder afterward. Because unlike before, he understands the emotional impact more clearly now. That changes the experience. Now, when he becomes distant, he knows she'll probably feel it. He knows the confusion it creates. He knows the silence hurts. And yet, sometimes he still does it anyway. That's important. Because awakening does not instantly erase emotional conditioning. Sometimes people know exactly what they're doing while still feeling unable to regulate themselves differently yet. That realization can make him feel weak honestly, especially if he prides himself on self-control in other areas of life. Because now he's confronting something he cannot logic his way through cleanly. Emotion, attachment, need. And there are nights where this contradiction becomes almost unbearable internally. He misses her intensely, almost physically. Starts imagining conversations, replaying memories, thinking about reaching out. Then suddenly another voice enters. What if you hurt her again? That question stops him sometimes. Not always out of wisdom. Sometimes out of shame. Because now he understands he's emotionally unpredictable while trying to become emotionally honest. And that's a frightening combination, especially when someone genuinely matters to you. There's also this weird emotional self-sabotage that starts happening now. He'll finally get the connection he wanted, then emotionally retreat once he has it. Not because he changed his mind. Because closeness activates unresolved fear faster than distance does. That's why emotionally avoidant men sometimes look calmer during separation than during intimacy. Distance numbs activation. Closeness exposes it. And now, he's realizing that what he interpreted as losing feelings in the past was often emotional overwhelm he didn't know how to process. That realization shakes him deeply. Because suddenly his entire understanding of himself starts changing. Maybe he wasn't bored. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he didn't stop caring. Maybe he panicked once caring became undeniable. That kind of self-awareness arrives painfully, especially when it's attached to losing someone important. And honestly, I think this stage is one of the loneliest parts of masculine awakening. Because externally, people often assume he's simply inconsistent or detached. Internally, he's fighting a war between emotional truth and emotional survival patterns. And some nights the internal dialogue becomes exhausting. You should just tell her. And say what? The truth. Which truth? That you miss her. Silence. That you got scared. Longer silence. That part of you still wants to run even now. And that's the hardest truth of all. Because now he's no longer only afraid of losing her. He's afraid of himself. Afraid that even after recognizing the depth of his feelings, he may still not know how to hold intimacy without trying to escape it. That realization humbles him completely. Not spiritually, humanly, in the deeply uncomfortable way that happens when someone realizes love exposed wounds they thought they had hidden successfully for years. This is when the grief becomes quiet. Not smaller, just quieter. Earlier stages felt chaotic inside him. Emotional confusion, restlessness, contradiction, the constant push and pull between wanting connection and fearing it. But now something shifts. The reality of her absence starts settling into ordinary life. And honestly, I think this is where it begins hurting in the deepest way. Because dramatic pain at least feels visible. This kind doesn't. This kind hides inside routines. Inside tiny moments nobody else would ever notice. Like standing in a grocery store reaching automatically for the snack she liked before remembering she's not coming over anymore. Or hearing a joke at work and instinctively thinking, she would have laughed at that. Then realizing there's nowhere to send the thought now. That's the kind of grief this becomes. Not loud heartbreak. Quiet emotional haunting. And the worst part is how involuntary it feels. His body keeps including her in a life she's no longer physically part of. That's what attachment actually looks like sometimes. Not obsession. Habitual emotional presence. She became integrated into his internal world so gradually he didn't fully notice it while it was happening. But now every routine exposes the outline she left behind. Morning coffee tastes slightly different because there's no conversation attached to it anymore. Driving home feels longer. Evenings feel strangely unfinished. And he starts realizing how many parts of his day quietly revolved around her emotionally. Not in dramatic ways. Human ways. He misses telling her random things. That's a painful one. Because it sounds so small until you experience it. He'll see something stupid online and almost send it to her automatically. Or something happens during his day, and his brain immediately forms the thought, I should tell her that. And then comes the silence afterward. That tiny emotional drop in the stomach. That moment where reality corrects the impulse. People underestimate how heartbreaking that becomes over time. Not having access to someone who became part of your internal dialogue. And honestly, I think this stage where he finally stops romanticizing distance completely. Because now he has to live inside the actual emotional consequences of it. The empty space where connection used to exist. The unbearable normality of missing someone. That's the phrase. Because grief is strange once it settles into daily life. At first it feels traumatic, acute. Later it becomes woven into ordinary moments so deeply that sometimes he doesn't even realize he's grieving until something random hits him sideways emotionally. A certain song in a parking lot. A restaurant they used to go to. The smell of laundry detergent that reminds him vaguely of her hoodie. Human memory is cruel like that. It stores emotion inside sensory details. And now the world keeps accidentally replaying her back to him. Not constantly. That's what makes it worse. Randomly. Unpredictably. He can go hours feeling relatively stable. Then suddenly hear someone say a phrase she used to say and feel his chest tighten instantly. The body remembers people long after routines change. And sometimes he reacts in almost embarrassing ways. Like staring too long at someone in public because for half a second they look like her from behind. Or replaying an old voice note just to hear her laugh again. Then immediately feeling ashamed afterward. Deleting it locking the phone, acting like it meant nothing. But it did mean something. That's what he's struggling with now. The growing inability to emotionally minimize her importance. And there's another layer to this that hurts deeply. He starts noticing how emotionally mechanical other interactions feel now. Not because nobody else is attractive or interesting, but because emotional familiarity is hard to replace once the nervous system attaches to it. Especially when the connection carried emotional depth he didn't fully appreciate until losing access to it. Now conversations feel thinner sometimes. Performative. He notices himself zoning out while people talk. Not intentionally. Part of him is just emotionally elsewhere. And late at night, that reality becomes impossible to avoid. Nighttime is brutal during this stage, because daytime still offers distractions, tasks, noise, movement, but nighttime exposes emotional absence clearly. The apartment gets quiet, the lights are low, and suddenly he feels the shape of the missing. That's the only way I can describe it. The shape of someone no longer there. He starts remembering tiny nighttime routines they had. Maybe she used to send good night texts. Maybe they fell asleep on FaceTime sometimes. Maybe she used to ask if he made it home safe. Those little rituals become devastating afterward because they carry emotional consistency he once took for granted. And now he reaches for the phone instinctively at night sometimes, then stops halfway through the motion. That physical interruption hurts more than people realize, because the body still expects connection before reality catches up. There are nights now where he just sits in silence longer than usual, not even doing anything, just existing inside the absence. And the thoughts become strangely specific. I wonder if she still sleeps on that side of the bed. I wonder if she still listens to that playlist. I wonder if she misses me during random moments too. That last thought lingers hardest, because once someone becomes emotionally integrated into your daily life, you start wondering if your absence echoes inside their routines the way there's echoes inside yours. And honestly, part of him hopes it does, even while another part feels guilty for hoping. That contradiction again, because now he understands the pain of emotional attachment more clearly. So wishing she misses him to feels both comforting and cruel. And there's this deeply human thing he starts doing now, mentally talking to her without actually contacting her. People rarely admit this out loud, but it happens. He'll experience moments during the day and internally narrate them toward her unconsciously. She would have made fun of this. She'd love this place. She'd tell me I'm overthinking again. It's like his mind still includes her perspective automatically. That's attachment, not fantasy. Emotional imprint. And sometimes grief sneaks in through incredibly mundane details, like folding clothes alone, eating dinner in silence, driving without hearing her voice through the speakers anymore. There's something uniquely painful about missing someone during ordinary life, because ordinary life keeps repeating, which means the absence repeats too, every day. And eventually, he starts realizing something uncomfortable. He didn't just lose romantic excitement. He lost emotional companionship. That realization hits differently, because attraction can be replaced more easily than emotional familiarity. But familiarity, the feeling of being known, that's harder, especially for men who spent most of their lives emotionally misunderstood. So now he begins grieving things he once overlooked entirely. Her attention to detail, her emotional consistency, the way she noticed subtle changes in him before he even verbalized them. And maybe the hardest realization of all is this: she became home to parts of him he never fully showed anyone else. That's terrifying to admit, especially after losing access to it. because now loneliness feels more personal than physical. Now it's not about being alone. It's about not feeling emotionally witnessed in the same way anymore. And there's a moment that happens during this stage where the denial finally weakens almost completely. Usually late at night. Usually during some painfully ordinary moment. He realizes this isn't fading. That thought scares him because he expected time alone to simplify his emotions. Instead, time made them more specific, more human, more undeniable. And maybe that's the cruelest part of awakening sometimes. Not realizing you loved someone, realizing it slowly while living without them. I think this is the stage where the awakening becomes less about the relationship and more about identity. Because up until now, most of his focus has still been external in some way. Missing her, regretting things, feeling emotional absence, fighting his own contradictions. But eventually the question underneath all of it starts becoming unavoidable. Why am I like this? Not in a dramatic self-help way, in a tired way. The kind of exhausted self-awareness that shows up after months of repeating emotional patterns that no longer make sense even to him. And honestly, I think this is one of the loneliest parts of the process. Because now he's no longer only grieving the connection. He's starting to question the version of himself he's spent years becoming. The emotionally detached version. The I don't need anyone version. The controlled version. The version that always kept one foot emotionally outside the door just in case things became too real. And at some point, that identity starts cracking. Not publicly, quietly. Maybe it begins during a conversation with a friend where he hears himself joking about relationships the same old way. And suddenly the joke feels empty. Or maybe someone asks him if he's happy and he answers automatically, "Yeah, I'm good." But something inside him immediately whispers, "No, you're not." That moment is unsettling. Because now there's distance between the mask and the truth. And once someone becomes aware of their own performance, it gets harder to fully disappear inside it again. That's what's happening to him now. He's beginning to realize how much of his emotional independence was actually emotional self-protection. And that realization humiliates him a little, especially if he built pride around being unaffected. Because now he's forced to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Maybe he wasn't emotionally free. Maybe he was emotionally guarded. There's a difference. One comes from peace. The other comes from fear. And fear can wear very convincing disguises for years. Sometimes it looks like independence. Sometimes it looks like control. Sometimes it looks like avoiding vulnerability while calling it protecting your peace. But eventually the emotional consequences expose the truth underneath the language. That's what's happening here. He's starting to recognize patterns he used to justify automatically. The distancing after intimacy. The emotional shutdowns during conflict. The need to regain control whenever connection became too deep. Before, those reactions felt normal to him. Now they feel revealing. And once he sees them clearly, he can't stop seeing them everywhere. In old relationships, old conversations, old versions of himself. There's this painful moment where he starts realizing, I've been running for a long time. Not necessarily physically, emotionally. Running from dependence. Running from vulnerability. Running from the possibility of being deeply known. And maybe the hardest realization of all is understanding that nobody forced him into emotional loneliness. He participated in creating it. That truth is difficult to sit with, especially for men who spent years believing emotional detachment made them strong. Because now the detachment feels less like strength and more like exhaustion. That's another thing nobody talks about enough. Emotional avoidance is exhausting. constantly monitoring closeness, pulling away when feelings deepen, acting unaffected while internally spiraling. It takes enormous energy to suppress emotional truth continuously. And now, his body is getting tired of maintaining the persona. That's why he starts feeling emotionally drained in situations that used to feel normal. Small talk exhausts him faster. Performative confidence feels hollow. Even flirting can start feeling strangely empty because he realizes how often he used attraction to avoid actual intimacy. That realization hits hard, especially when he recognizes how many times he confused emotional unavailability with emotional power. There's this late-night self-confrontation that starts happening now. The kind that only appears when someone finally gets quiet enough to hear themselves honestly. You said you wanted freedom. Yeah. So why does your life feel emotionally empty now? Silence. You said you didn't want attachment. I know. Then why does losing her feel like losing part of yourself? That question sits heavily in him, because it forces him to confront the possibility that what he feared most wasn't actually love. It was emotional dependence. And underneath that fear is usually something even older. The fear of being hurt, abandoned, rejected, consumed. Not enough. A lot of emotionally avoidant men aren't disconnected because they feel too little. Sometimes they're disconnected because they feel too much and learned early that vulnerability was unsafe. So they build personas instead. The calm one, the logical one, the detached one. And over time, those personas became survival identities. That's why this stage feels so destabilizing. Because now the identity itself is being questioned. Not just the relationship. Him. Who he became emotionally. There are moments now where he physically notices himself wanting to shut down emotionally in real time. That awareness is new. Maybe someone asks him a vulnerable question and he feels the instinct to deflect immediately. But now, instead of automatically obeying the reflex, he notices it. That pause matters. Because awareness creates friction between the impulse and the behavior. And honestly, sometimes that awareness makes him feel worse before it makes him better. Because now he sees how automatic his defenses really were. He sees how often he disconnected during intimacy without meaning to. How often he treated emotional needs like pressure because he secretly didn't know how to meet his own. And there's grief in that realization too. Grief for the younger version of himself who learned emotional suppression somewhere along the way. Men don't become emotionally avoidant in a vacuum. Usually there's history underneath it. Experiences that taught him vulnerability creates pain, weakness, instability. So he adapted, controlled himself harder, needed less, stayed emotionally self-contained, until someone finally reached him deeply enough to expose how lonely the adaptation actually was. That's what she did. And maybe that's why losing her affects him so profoundly. Because she didn't just challenge his feelings. She challenged the emotional identity he built his life around. Now, he can't fully return to the old version of himself comfortably anymore. The detached persona no longer fits the same. It feels forced, incomplete. There's this strange embarrassment he starts feeling now too. Embarrassment over how emotionally performative masculinity can become sometimes. The pretending not to care, the delayed responses, the emotional withholding used as self-protection. He starts seeing how much energy went into appearing unaffected. And honestly, part of him feels sad about it. Sad for the years he spent confusing emotional distance with maturity. Sad for the relationships that suffered because he didn't know how to stay emotionally present when things became real. Sad because he finally understands that intimacy wasn't suffocating him. Fear was. That realization changes him quietly, not instantly. Not perfectly. There are still days he regresses emotionally. Still moments where he wants to disappear instead of communicate. Still instincts to protect himself by shutting down. But now those behaviors no longer feel invisible to him. That's the difference. Awareness has entered the room. And awareness makes old patterns harder to emotionally survive without questioning them. Especially when those patterns cost him someone important. There's a moment during this stage where he realizes something deeply human and deeply painful. He spent years trying not to need anyone, only to discover that being emotionally needed and emotionally known were actually some of the most meaningful experiences of his life. That realization breaks something open inside him, because now he understands the cost of emotional self-protection more clearly. Yes, it protected him from vulnerability, but it also protected him from closeness, from softness, from intimacy, from being fully seen. And once he understands that, the old persona starts collapsing under the weight of its own loneliness. I think this is the stage where people outside of him become the most confused. Because by now the feelings are undeniable. He knows she mattered. He knows he misses her. He knows the connection changed him. That part is no longer the issue. The issue now is expression. How do you explain feelings you spent years suppressing? How do you suddenly become emotionally fluent after a lifetime of emotional self-protection? You don't. Not smoothly, anyway. That's why this stage feels so awkward and painfully human. Because internally, he's full of things he wants to say. But emotionally, he still doesn't fully know how to carry vulnerability without panicking halfway through it. So now he lives in this strange space between emotional urgency and emotional paralysis. And honestly, it tortures him. He starts typing messages he never sends. That happens a lot during this phase. Not dramatic confessions necessarily. Sometimes just simple things. How have you been? I saw something that reminded me of you. I've been thinking about you lately. Normal human sentences. But the emotional weight behind them feels enormous to him now. Because reaching out means risking reality. And fantasy is safer than reality. In fantasy, maybe she still cares. Maybe she still misses him. Maybe there's still space for a pair. But once he actually speaks, he could lose the illusion too. That's terrifying. Especially for someone already carrying shame. So instead, he writes messages in his notes app sometimes, or types into the chat box and stares at the blinking cursor for 20 minutes, then deletes everything. There's something deeply heartbreaking about emotionally unavailable men once they finally become emotionally honest internally, because by the time the truth fully reaches their heart, fear has already wrapped itself around it. Fear of rejection. Fear of accountability. Fear that they waited too long. And honestly, sometimes they did wait too long. That's part of the tragedy too. Awareness arriving late does not magically reverse consequences. So now every impulse toward connection is tangled with uncertainty. What if she's done now? That question follows him everywhere. Especially late at night. Especially after seeing signs she might actually be moving forward emotionally. Maybe she posts less sadness online. Maybe she looks calmer. Maybe she stops indirectly reaching for him emotionally the way she used to. And instead of feeling relieved for her, his stomach drops. Because now the loss feels real in a different way. Not theoretical anymore. Possible. Permanent. That realization creates panic sometimes. Quiet panic. Not loud breakdowns. More like him sitting in his car reading old conversations, because hearing her emotional warmth again temporarily calms something inside him. Or opening her profile repeatedly without interacting. or rehearsing imaginary conversations in the shower like a teenager. That's the thing nobody tells you about masculine awakening. It can look incredibly emotionally immature while it's happening, because emotional growth often exposes how underdeveloped someone actually was emotionally underneath the persona. So now he's confronting feelings he should have communicated months ago, and realizing he has no idea how to say them naturally. That awareness embarrasses him deeply, especially if he built his identity around competence and composure, because love makes emotionally defended people feel clumsy. Suddenly, he overthinks every word, every timing choice, every possible reaction. And underneath all the overthinking is usually one desperate hope. I just don't want to make things worse. That matters, because despite all his past avoidance, he genuinely does not want to hurt her anymore now. The problem is fear still interrupts action constantly, so he keeps hesitating, and hesitation becomes its own form of suffering. He'll almost call her then put the phone down, almost send the text then delete it, almost tell the truth then emotionally retreat at the last second. There's this exhausting internal argument happening constantly now. Just say it. No. Why? Because what if she ignores me? You deserve that possibility. Silence. What if she answers? That question scares him too. Because if she responds warmly, then intimacy becomes real again. And intimacy still activates fear alongside longing. That contradiction hasn't disappeared yet. So now he's emotionally trapped between two terrifying possibilities: losing her completely, or being emotionally seen by her again. And honestly, sometimes vulnerability feels more frightening than loss to wounded people. That's how deep emotional self-protection can go. There are nights where he practices conversations in his head repeatedly, not poetic speeches. Small moments, imagining her voice saying hello again, imagining how he'd explain himself, imagining apologizing without sounding defensive. And usually halfway through these imaginary conversations, shame interrupts him, because now he hears his own past behavior differently too. The coldness, the inconsistency, the disappearing acts, and suddenly every possible sentence feels inadequate. What do you even say after emotionally confusing someone you genuinely loved? Sorry feels too small. I was scared feels incomplete. I didn't realize how much you mattered until afterwards sounds almost insulting once spoken out loud. Even if it's true. Especially if it's true. That's what makes this stage emotionally brutal. The truth exists inside him now, but translating truth into communication feels terrifyingly vulnerable. So sometimes he settles for indirect contact instead, watching her stories quickly, liking something subtle months later, sending random messages that avoid the actual emotional core completely. And afterward he feels frustrated with himself again, because the real words still remain trapped underneath everything else. That's the part people often misunderstand. Silence does not always mean absence of feeling. Sometimes silence means emotional incapacity colliding with overwhelming feeling. And honestly, I think this is where many divine masculines begin realizing how emotionally unprepared they were for real intimacy all along. Not because they lacked love, because they lacked emotional language. That's different. You can deeply love someone and still fail at communicating safety, fail at expressing consistency, fail at staying emotionally present once vulnerability enters the room. And now he sees that clearly, painfully clearly, which is why even imagining contact makes his nervous system react physically sometimes. Heart racing, chest tightening, restless energy afterward. Because emotionally, this isn't casual anymore. She matters too much now. And when someone matters deeply, the possibility of rejection stops feeling abstract. It becomes bodily, human. There's also grief in realizing she may never fully understand how much he struggled internally. Because from her perspective, she mostly experienced the behavior, the distance, the inconsistency, the silence, not the internal war underneath it. And maybe she shouldn't have had to. That realization humbles him too. Because now he understands the unspoken love still creates spoken pain sometimes. Intentions don't erase emotional impact. So now he sits there carrying sentences he should have said earlier. I was overwhelmed. I cared more than I admitted. You mattered to me the entire time. I was terrified of needing you. And maybe the saddest part is, some of these truths only became fully conscious after losing access to her emotionally. That's devastating for him to accept. Because now he understands something deeply human and deeply unfair. Sometimes people do not emotionally awaken in time to protect the relationship that woke them up. And there's one internal dialogue that repeats during this stage more than almost any other. What if she's finally happy? Silence. Then leave her alone. Long silence. But what if she still needs to hear the truth? That question stays with him. Because eventually the desire to emotionally tell the truth becomes stronger than the desire to keep hiding from it. Not always stronger than fear yet, but stronger than denial. And honestly, that may be one of the most real signs of awakening there is. Not becoming perfectly healed. Not suddenly fearless. Just reaching the point where silence finally starts hurting more than vulnerability does. I don't think awakening looks the way people imagine it does. I really don't. People expect some dramatic transformation. A perfectly timed apology. A man suddenly becoming emotionally fluent overnight. But most of the time it's quieter than that. Messier. Less cinematic. It's not him becoming fearless. It's him becoming unable to lie to himself anymore. That's different. Because for a long time, denial protected him. Distance protected him. Distraction protected him. Emotional detachment protected him. Or at least it seemed to. But eventually the protection starts costing more than the vulnerability itself. And I think that's the moment something truly shifts inside him. Not perfection. Honesty. Painfully delayed honesty. There's usually no single dramatic moment where everything changes. It's more like exhaustion finally overtakes resistance. He gets tired. Tired of replaying conversations in his head. Tired of pretending the connection meant less than it did. Tired of carrying emotions in silence while acting emotionally unaffected externally. And honestly tired of running from himself. That's the deeper truth underneath all of this. Because the entire journey was never only about avoiding her. He was avoiding what she awakened inside him. Need. Attachment. Dependency. Softness. Fear. All the human things he spent years trying to manage privately. And now, he finally understands something that changes him permanently. The connection did not weaken him. The avoidance did. That realization lands quietly, usually during an ordinary moment. Not while meditating on a mountain somewhere. More likely while sitting alone in his car after a long day realizing he still thinks about her during every emotionally significant moment in his life. Or waking up one morning and understanding that the grief never actually disappeared. It just became integrated into him. And instead of fighting that realization now, he slowly starts surrendering to the truth of it. Not dramatically, humanly. There is a difference between obsessing over someone and finally admitting someone mattered deeply to you. This stage is the second one. And the strange thing is once he stops resisting his feelings internally, something softens in him. Not all at once, but enough. The constant internal war begins calming slightly because he's no longer arguing with reality every second. He misses her. Yes, he loves her. Probably. He was scared. Definitely. And maybe for the first time in his life, he stops trying to intellectualize those truths into something smaller or more manageable. That's growth. Not becoming emotionally perfect. Just becoming emotionally honest. And honestly, there's grief in that honesty too. Because acceptance means he can no longer blame timing entirely, or circumstances, or confusion. Now, he has to face the fact that fear influenced his behavior heavily, that his avoidance had consequences, that someone he genuinely cared about may have suffered while he was emotionally fighting himself. That truth humbles him deeply, but it also opens him. Because once a man stops defending his own emotional defenses constantly, he becomes more capable of intimacy. Not instantly capable, but capable of trying differently. And maybe that's the most real version of awakening. Not enlightenment. Willingness. Willingness to stop hiding. Willingness to stop pretending distance feels better than connection. Willingness to let love exist without immediately turning it into danger. That shift changes his energy in subtle ways. He becomes quieter, but more sincere, less performative, less interested in appearing emotionally unaffected. Sometimes sadness still hits him unexpectedly. That doesn't disappear. He'll still hear songs that hurt, still remember little things at inconvenient moments, still feel guilt sometimes when certain memories surface. But now, he lets himself feel it instead of instantly trying to outrun it. That matters more than people realize. Because emotionally avoidant people often spend years interrupting their own feelings before those feelings fully form. Now, he's learning how to stay. Inside discomfort. Inside vulnerability. Inside longing. Without immediately escaping. And honestly, that process is not graceful. There are still nights where he almost reaches out and doesn't. Still moments where fear spikes suddenly. Still parts of him that want emotional certainty before risking vulnerability. Healing doesn't erase old wiring overnight. But the difference now is awareness. Before, he disappeared unconsciously. Now, he feels himself disappearing while it's happening. Before, he justified emotional distance automatically. Now, distance tastes lonely to him. That changes things. There's also this quiet grief he carries now about the version of her that loved him before all the damage happened. That's a painful truth. Because once awakening fully settles in, he realizes relationships don't stay emotionally frozen while someone is figuring themselves out. People change. People get tired. People heal. And part of him wonders if the version of her who waited for him emotionally even still exists anymore. That thought hurts him deeply. Not in a possessive way, in a human way. Because now he understands how much emotional labor she carried trying to love someone who was still afraid of intimacy. And maybe she eventually had to stop carrying it. That realization forces maturity into him slowly. Not because suffering automatically makes people wise, but because sustained self-awareness eventually becomes impossible to ignore. There is a conversation he starts having with himself now that sounds different than before. Before it was, how do I avoid feeling this? Now it's, what do I actually want? That question changes everything. Because avoidance is reactive. Honesty is intentional. And when he answers truthfully, really truthfully, the answer is usually simpler than all the complicated emotional strategies he hid inside for years. He wanted connection. Real connection. Not control. Not emotional distance disguised as freedom. Not half-love with escape routes built into it. He wanted to be understood. And loved. And emotionally safe enough to stop performing strength constantly. That's the heartbreaking thing. A lot of emotionally avoidant men aren't running from love itself. They're running from the exposure love creates. But eventually, exhaustion strips the performance down. And underneath the detachment, underneath the fear, underneath all the disappearing acts and contradictions, there's usually just a human being who wanted closeness, but didn't know how to survive it emotionally. And once he sees that clearly, compassion begins replacing some of the self-hatred. Not excuses. Compassion. There's a difference. He stops viewing himself as some cold monster incapable of love. But he also stops romanticizing his behavior. He understands now that pain can explain behavior without justifying it. That maturity matters. Because now he's no longer trying to protect his ego at all costs. Now he's trying to protect truth, even if the truth is uncomfortable, even if the truth arrives late. And maybe that's the final stage of awakening honestly. Not reunion, not guarantees, just emotional truth becoming stronger than emotional avoidance. There's one final internal dialogue that happens sometimes during this stage. A quieter one than before, less panicked, less defensive. You loved her. Silence. You were scared. Yeah, you lost parts of her because of that. Long silence. And now. And I think the answer finally becomes simple. Now he stops running. Not necessarily toward her immediately. Not necessarily into some perfect ending. Just away from denial. Away from numbness. Away from the version of himself that thought shutting down emotionally was the same thing as being safe. Because eventually he understands something deeply human. Avoiding vulnerability did not protect his heart. It only delayed his grief. And by the time he finally lets himself fully feel everything, the love has already changed him forever.
Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this message resonated with your soul, remember to subscribe and continue this journey with us here on Twin Flame Journey. And always remember, what is meant for your soul will always find its way back to you. Until next time, beautiful soul, trust the journey.